It's not going to be precise. And this is where I think building critical thinking, building the ability to collaborate, building the ability to work with actual human beings in all walks of life is going to be super important. So just as AI sort of takes on a bigger role on campus, I think the human side of it should also take on a bigger role. And I think all of us will have to lean in and engage more with our students in the classroom and outside than we've ever done before.
I think the role of the academic and the student will change in that in some cases the student will be the one who brings the knowledge and brings the experience and brings the expertise. So it's how do we make sure that in the academic spaces that we have, we create the environment in which that's acceptable and that's possible. We're seeing a lot of that now, but we need to create more of it. I also think there's a real opportunity for us to break down barriers between different disciplinary areas. We talk about the amazing work that happens in the interdisciplinary space. But if we are training technologists and educating technologists and they don't understand the social sciences of the technology that they're using, if they don't think about regulatory aspects or ethical aspects, they're going to be less successful as a result of that. So I do think, as well as really starting to think about who is bringing the knowledge, who's bringing the experience, also thinking about how do we get the best out of all disciplines and not see technology as something which is for one set of students and one set of areas. It's actually something that has an effect right across the area.
So several of you already touched on this, but I'd like us to expand a bit on workforce development. And specifically, how should educational systems integrate AI to better prepare students for the evolving demands of the future workforce? And how do we prepare today's graduates for a future that really is rapidly changing and not yet defined? Ken, we can start down at your end. We'll come back this way.
Yeah. I think when I talk to employers, they will always talk about the fact that they think they can train the technical skills, but what they want is to make sure that the workforce they get is adaptable and resilient. And so I think if all we were to do was to focus on the precision of the technical skills that we're sending out into the workforce, we won't have sent out people who are properly adaptable to the change that's going to happen. I mean, we are already seeing it in some disciplines that by the time someone graduates, the role of that particular discipline in the workplace has already moved on. And that has led to some employers saying that universities are not equipping people with the right thing. In the end, it comes down to what people can do with their knowledge. It's not about the precision of the knowledge. It's not about the time relevance of it. It's about making sure that they are adaptable, they're flexible, they take interest in contexts and areas which are different from their own. So I think the most important aspect, bluntly, is the human aspect, because people can be moved into different domains and develop different technical skills. But if they haven't got the internal capability to be able to adapt, to be able to flex, then they're going to be less useful to employers in the future.
Do you want me to speak to that or jump in? Okay. I do think you're right, Ken. I think it's the human aspect, right? If you look at AI, right, to recognize a cat, I mean, AI has trained on probably 10 million images of cats and it still make a mistake. I mean, think of a child. A child sees one cat or maybe two cats and will be able to point out any cat anywhere, right? So the human ability to learn is still unsurpassed. And I think that's at the heart of it, right? Because it's going to be not just AI, it's human beings and AI. And so while AI is a tool, it's going to be the spirit of learning, it's the spirit of human creativity, it's the spirit of collaboration that's going to dominate. And I think the more we can inculcate that in our students, that's going to make a difference, because it's not going to be about pushing out educational content, as President Jahanian mentioned. It's really about developing the individual.
Thank you, Padma. I think I'd like to return to something that Padma mentioned the last go-around, which is the cross-disciplinary. And that's already a challenge, although many schools are meeting that challenge. In order to reap the benefits that we know are there, it's going to have to be cross-disciplinary on steroids. And by that I mean things like system to do in order, if one is really going to do a digital twin or use a digital twin, assessment and evaluation approaches, all of that has to somehow be built into the educational program. And as was also mentioned this morning, use-inspired focus within the discipline is also going to be needed.
I think it's already been said, but for me, I think, AI is not just a module that people do if they're studying computer science. This has to be at the core of all our degrees in all our institutions, what we do. It has to be embedded right into the middle of all our curriculums. And we need to collaborate with industry as well and keep asking industry, what do you want our graduates to look like? Now, we're very good at that in Belfast because we're a small place and you can walk down the street and you can bump into most of the chief execs of most of the big companies very quickly. Contrary to all the cliches, we do all know each other, and we're probably most of us related as well. But it is that thing of we need that collaboration. We've heard it today from the very start of the conversation right through to the latest panel. And if we can collaborate with industry to keep asking what do you want our graduates to look like, then we as institutions need to embed that at the front and centre of all our degrees and all our courses. Because the AI will keep developing, the technology will keep developing, but we just need to keep up with that. And I think, Ken, your point at the start is really relevant as well, in that we need people to be thinkers. And I have this debate all the time in my day job in our business as to the value of a degree from a university versus people coming into the workforce through other routes. And I still think what universities do for people is they prepare them for life. And it might not be the obvious academic piece, but it's all the other bits. And it's the fact that you collide with people, you have conversations with people, you learn a lot, you have to fend for yourself, you have to use technology. That is, for me, what is core about universities and why they're still so very important.
I agree with all of the panelists' comments on the nature of the content and the foci that will be really important for integration into education under AI. So I'll add more of an infrastructure piece that I think will enable this along two lines. One, I think, and I think Owen and others brought this up, for education to integrate AI into its efforts, it needs to be more nimble and agile, and I would argue data-informed in keeping up with the change. So I think infrastructure-wise, integrating AI into education means keeping track of how the curricula are effectively or not effectively preparing students for what they need and adjusting that in a continuous monitoring cycle. In addition, I think we need to think about education as a lifelong endeavor, and so infrastructure to support lifelong learning is another aspect of integrating AI into education.
Terrific, thank you. For the next question, we'll be thinking about the relationship between AI and people. And when you think about your answers, if you're able to provide some examples of how you and your institutions are approaching this, it would be great. Here's the question. What does effective human-AI collaboration look like in an educational setting? How can students be trained to use AI responsibly? What are the best examples you've seen of preparing people to treat AI as a coworker? Anyone want to go first?
Okay, I'll pitch in. I'm going to start in the first part of your conversation, or the first part of your question, and allow others to come in at the back end. But thinking of AI as a tool in education as opposed to the enablement side, I'll give you one example. Something we've done at Queen's is chatbots. Now, we're all well used to chatbots. Every website you go onto, you see it, it's there. But it's that agentic AI piece. And we have used it very successfully to answer very simple queries for students, to the extent that in January of this year, when we last assessed it, 98% of those queries were being dealt with successfully by the chatbots. 2% got escalated up for human intervention. But if you think about that, these are teams of people who are working directly with students on pedagogy and other areas. This is freeing up their time immensely to actually focus on the student and their learning experience and their well-being. So that's a really good example of where, as a tool, it's directly been effective.
I'll try this. I think there are examples from the past that can inform us. And one example that comes to mind is a product called Read 180. You can Google Read 180, you'll get an AI summary. And even today, I think there'll be about a million students using it around the world. And it's technology that was created at Vanderbilt over 25 years ago. And it was based on learning theory and, knew a lot about education from our School of Education. But it allowed students who were lagging behind in their reading skills to learn at their pace, but as part of the entire community. It wasn't just a tool tossed out to them saying, hey, you can learn at your own pace. It was tied with what was going on in grades 3 through 12. How were they tested? How were they given additional resources? All of that. So I think there's a framework here. Whatever we do here has to become very deeply embedded in how we practice education or research or innovation, all of the above. And I think it's going to have to involve communities beyond the traditional university setting. I think the earlier we can bring in the private sector, the earlier we can bring in, say, philanthropic associations and other parts of the entire community and sort of see how students, when they graduate, can be working in those settings is going to be important. And so I think we need to really embed this as part of our life.
Yeah, I'd give two examples. One, we talk a lot about student well-being and staff well-being, and there are lots and lots of startups out there that are trying to use wearables and other things to get people to, and see examples of how moods are changing, emotions are changing, heart rates are changing, and then using AI to try and read that across. And going back to Owen's point before, in all of the well-being spaces, the human bit of that is under incredible pressure because the demand is going up. But if the AI technology can help to actually filter out those ones which stand out as being significant, then obviously that can help. I'll just give one practical example of machine and human though, which is, so my institution, one of its main focus is on agriculture, and it was one of the, if not the first, university farm in the world to have a fully autonomous season from sort of planting all the way to then taking all the crops up. And in my first week as the Vice Chancellor, one of the things I was asked to do was to stand in a field and allow an autonomous combine harvester to come towards me. And in the knowledge that all of these various models had been tested and various other aspects of it. And I was to stand in the middle of a field and make sure that I didn't move, because this was a sign of me testing the trust of my team. So the human interaction was I was standing there with this wonderful big machine coming towards me while seeing an incredibly nervous set of humans standing to my right. And I still don't think they quite realize it. Every other minute, one of them moved very quickly because they were given the indication that maybe the machine wasn't going as far as they were. In the end, that situation required a combination of technology and people. And there needed to be something in place so that if the machine was not going in the direction that people wanted it to do, there was still a mechanism to pull it back. And I think for me that's at the heart of what we're talking about, which is we shouldn't be threatened by the notion that the machine can do things better than we can. We just have to make sure that we teach students how to recalibrate what their role is and how they can come in at the right time to make sure that they play the role they can.
And did you pass the test and just stand still there?
I did.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
It's to tell the tale.
Yeah.
And it stopped.
It did stop. It did stop.
So maybe one example will illustrate, I think, some of the future challenges. We have been using AI for coding, but as is common in bio and other safety critical systems, we really are pairing that with a very experienced designer to ensure the integrity of the results. And normally that initial coding would be done by early career, and we're a little stumped now how we do the knowledge transfer from those who are very experienced and can provide that level of oversight when we're not giving the early career individuals the training that they would have normally received. So that's just...
I'm loving the theme that I'm hearing in response to this question, that what we're talking about is social change and technological change. And I think we really need to lean into that combination and think about them together. The example I was going to give is really the idea that humans partnering with AI should be in using the tool in the role as a thought partner, especially when we're talking about students in a learning role. And when you're looking at the tool as a thought partner, it's helping you. You're still engaged in that critical thinking. It's not a substitute for your thinking. And what we've been doing at Carnegie Mellon is recognizing that any technology can lead to opportunities and or challenges, is we're trying to study what happens when our faculty innovate in encouraging their students to use AI tools as thought partners. And what we're doing, I'm a learning scientist by training, we're actually looking at this as a way of applying learning science in the courses to study the impacts. And so one example is, think about writing. AI has a lot of impacts in writing. We want our students to still be engaging in critical thinking, drafting and revising, using the AI as a thought partner to provide them targeted feedback on multiple drafts in succession. And this combination, we have found in a really nicely, rigorously controlled study, leads to better performance, better writing quality at the end. And so it's a really great example of the AI is performing a task, the student is still engaged in some of those key aspects of writing, and ultimately then learning and performing better. So I like to think of it as a thought partner and studying the impacts with learning science techniques.
Marcia, that answer is a great segue to the next question, which is a focus on the learner. And people would say that AI can give quick answers, but how do we make sure it actually helps students think deeper, more creatively, and truly take advantage of the AI in their education? And another way of asking the question is, how can AI be leveraged to create a truly personalized learning experience without compromising human connection and critical thinking? Ken, you want to start on this one?
Yeah, so I think in part it comes down to what was said before about seeing it as a co-partner of what you do. So I think back to times when it's very easy to get to a quick answer. It's a lot harder to explain how you got to the answer, what you used to get to the answer, and why you made the choices that you did. And I think it's really important in either the interactions we have with our students or in the assessment that we use with our students that we're pulling all of that out. So we're not just simply judging them on the quality of the response, we're judging them on the quality of the process that went into developing that response. And because in the end, what we're trying to do is make sure they retain a questioning mindset, not just an answering mindset. Because the whole point of it is, as we know, it's not just for AI, it's for knowledge creation everywhere. We actually want people to be used to failing. We want them to be used to getting the wrong answer and understanding why they got the wrong answer and then what they could have done differently. So if all we do is allow them to shortcut to the response, bluntly, unless there's something fundamentally wrong with the AI, they're going to win all the time. And a lot of the innovations that we have got coming through just wouldn't happen. So I think for me it's very much around just making sure that we are giving them the confidence to put themselves forward, to put their own capability forward, their own capacity forward, and show how that has been augmented by access to a range of different tools and infrastructure to enable them to do it, and not allow themselves to become secondary to the technology. They need to be primary to the technology.
May I build on that, Ken? So one thing that I was going to use in my response to this question is we want to give students agency. Mm-hmm. And so I really feel that connection with what you said. And I think for students to have agency to use these tools effectively, to maintain their role, they need to know something about what's under the hood. In order to understand what the tool's strengths are and where their strengths are going to be most important. So I think one thing we've done at Carnegie Mellon is create a set of modules for students about how these tools work and how to use them strategically when you're in a learner role. Now, to others' points, this set of modules will not be evergreen. We're going to need to keep updating them, but I think that idea of the knowledge of the technology and the skill of how to use it effectively and strategically, if we can focus on that, I think that'll really help students to take on what you were saying.
I wanted to jump in and say that, this is going to be a moment for universities, right? Because we don't we don't have the answers. I think we'll have to experiment, and we'll have to experiment as we are delivering education, because there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all, right? As to how you use AI to train a radiologist is going to be very different than how you use AI to maybe train a student who's specializing in English literature. And so I think there's going to be an opportunity to take on a lot of experiments. And I think as we do that, I think we can illustrate the fact that part of learning and creativity is failing, some of what you said. Part of it is having AI as a thought partner. So I think this is a bit of uncharted territory, but I think it's very exciting because the concept of the traditional classroom is going to be changed, and how we do it is up to us. And I think the more we can experiment and be open to ideas, I think we're going to end up finding some fantastic ways of educating the next generation.
I think just to complement what's been said, I do think that this is an area where additional research is needed. And metrics are going to have to be established for what constitutes success so that we can do the learning that we need to learn.
I'm familiar with one, not Queen's, but I'm familiar with an organization at the minute who is totally personalizing the education platform. So they're rolling this out for the first year to try it. And what it means is everybody going through that, call it a degree pathway, well, every single person will learn in a different way, right? So you log onto your portal, you do real-time assessments, and what it does is the core module and content behind it is all the same for everybody, but it will assess you on different parts of that and assess your weaknesses, and therefore it will give you prompts and focus your learning around areas that you're currently weak in and help you develop in that. Now, I think that's super. But I think the risk in all of this is about the cognitive thinking piece, exactly what you were talking about, and keeping people fresh in terms of being problem solvers. Because, again, back to my professional job, accountants, we're problem solvers. We spend our lives solving people's problems. But in order to become that problem solver, you have to have spent a lot of time doing stuff that's not overly exciting quite often. But you learn through that. So I think what it means is we have to get smarter about how we teach people to become that kind of middle layer. So how do we get them from the bottom to the middle layer, where they're creative thinkers, they can solve problems, and how do we use AI as a tool to get us there? I don't have an answer to that question. If somebody does, come and talk to me afterwards.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. We are clearly at a transformative moment in education. And for me, I would say this is one of the most exciting times in my career as we think about how we are going to bring AI into our environment, expand on it, and see how education evolves over this time. I'd ask all of you to please join me in thanking a terrific panel.